Well, the journey took another road trip. So in this episode, we're going to do a recap of the North Carolina early season. So I was fortunate enough to be able to go down and spend a couple of days with, my friend Brent, and I call him BB, and Doug. They was good enough to have me down, and a lot of the same hunting that we did on the coast of Virginia. It's kind of like same type of territory, same type of environment. Man, did we get on a nice bear. Walked that booger for a while, but we'll get into that when we get into the details of the hunt. So, BB, how's things down your way today?
Oh, doing all right. Just did a little deer hunting today. Didn't see any bears around, so figured I'd go with the deer dogs a little bit.
So are y'all done with the hounds for a couple of weeks, or are y'all going to still try to fit them in every once in a while?
We'll still look around some. It just depends if most of the deer clubs, if they see a bear or something like that, or see sign of something, they'll give us a call and we'll load up and head over. So we got a good enough relationship with them that if they see something, they usually give us a call and we drop whatever we're doing and load up the dogs and go to them.
So it's just kind of just a play it by ear until the next season comes in, which will be in December, right?
Well, so we have some hunts lined up. The middle of the state comes in. I think it's the first week in December of Virginia, and then so we'll go to some counties in the middle of the state and do some hunts every year, and then and then Suffolk's in now, but
you and I had talked about some of the places in between me and you, hadn't we?
That's right. That's right. That middle of the state, the deer clubs there, their populations have increased, and I kind of line up some hunts there. And if it works out this year, we only have a week in between, or week once that season comes in, and then the North Carolina season. Years past, we've had 2 weeks, so. So it just kind of depends on what we see here around the house, and then if we see something here, we'll hunt, and if not, we got some stuff planned for later on before the second North Carolina season.
So is deer the guys running deer down there, is that in full swing right now?
Yes, yep. So that came in Saturday.
And in the places that we hunted, that's basically all territory that they use.
Correct. So there's different hunt clubs we've built good enough relationships with that basically they'll give us a call if they see something, and we take the members in to kill the deers, basically is how, or we're members ourselves, or landowner members, or stuff like that. So.
Yeah, I knew you had told me that before. So, tell me, let's go through a couple of the hunt. Y'all hunted 3 days before I got there, and then I hunted a couple days, and then you hunted 2 or 3 days. And when I left, and it seemed like after I left, everything just picked up, and y'all got after them.
Got lucky.
Well, there's a lot. I don't know about that. I mean, I've seen the dogs work, and you and I had talked while I was down there. I enjoy the mountains are home to me. It's what I grew up doing. That's what I know. It's just kind of the way of life here. This is what you do. But I enjoy coming down there so much because it's so different. And yes, the environment is completely different. And I stepped over in that drainage ditch and sucked plumb up almost to my hips because I weigh too much and I couldn't get out of it. But and it's thick, it's brushy, it's briary. but at the same time, I don't have to. I'm not. I know it sounds like I'm lazy, but I'm not. I'm not hiking 10 or 12 miles in and out of the woods or to the dogs, and that part of it is I enjoy that. I enjoy that part of it, knowing that them dogs are going to come through that block, and we'll get our hands on them or get them packed up. At the house, you don't have that opportunity a lot of times. So
yeah, here we're very fortunate. The blocks are, for the most part, small enough that it makes it a little easier to pack dogs. And then too, while they're thick, again, you're not taking mile. You can get it. You're in the race usually around that block. If the wind's right, you're going to hear what the dogs are doing, and be able to be in the race. So, I mean, as far as that goes, it's a great place to hunt.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. Like I said, I enjoy it. I really enjoy just being down and seeing the different ways to hunt. I really enjoy listening to Doug talk. And I know he kind of's the spearhead and the mentor in y'all's group. And I seen different guys that I hadn't seen before when we were in North Carolina. But the same kind of core group was come up and hunted with you. So I knew them and had been around their dogs and stuff. So it's always enjoyable for me. And like I said, it's a learning thing. I like to learn. I like to listen. I like to watch. And I get my feelings hurt sometimes too. That's the thing about it. But
I mean, and dogs you never know what they're going to do and how they're going to do it. And, if you say the dog will do one thing, he'll make you a liar. That's one.
Yes.
You're better off to just keep your mouth shut and let them work.
Yeah, that's exactly right. So start us off on y'all season. I know it come in on a Saturday. Just talk to us about the hunt. Tell us about your hunt. If you want to get into the dog stuff, you can. If you just want to get into the hunt itself, the 2 days that I was there, I mean, it was good. So just walk us through the beginning of your season.
So I mean, it came in actually on a Friday in certain counties down there. Certain counties it comes in a day early. So we hunted a Friday, but the weather was terrible. Rain came in, high winds, really wasn't a good morning. It rained, poured down rain from probably 4 to probably about 8:30 that morning. Anyway, the first day we didn't do anything. They tried to mess around a little bit, but we didn't we didn't ever get after anything other than a possum. I think some of the guys got after a possum, but
Well.
That's part of it. But the second day we had a good day. We ended up killing 3, I believe, the second day, and the smallest one of those 3 was 484. And so let's see. The first one, a few good dogs took one. Walked it across the path, and a guy got it. The second one, that one was, the fellow went into the tree and said, he estimated him at 270, 275. Well, and the bear ended up weighing 545. That bear did. And so,
well, that thing drove when it hit the ground, didn't it?
It did. I guess he felt like he was. I mean, I get it. They're hard to judge. I mean, bears are not easy to judge in a tree, and I'll tell people that all the time. It's hard to judge them. And this one fooled him, and I wasn't in that tree. But anyway, a girl got that one, and I believe that was her first bear, and so she was tickled to death. And,
I bet.
So and then the biggest one was 552, I believe, and that one we found it. The dogs found it right off, trailed it up, found it, and he moved maybe about 50 yards. And that was it. And bayed for probably about 2 hours before we could get in there and get him killed. And he never moved. He bayed right underneath a fell over tree. And that was one of those situations where, you had to get in there and really take a look at the scenario that you had to make sure that you got somebody in there to make a good, clean shot. In that thick stuff on a big bear like that. So we actually ended up climbing on top of the tree and shot down on top of the bear that he was under. I mean, because we were on top of the tree that had fell over that he was kind of backed up underneath. So that, and it worked out great. The guy made a great shot, and no dogs got hurt. So I mean, that was definitely a win-win, and the start of a good season anyway.
Yeah, I want to go back to it's hard to judge bear in a tree. I'll tell a story on us. The first year that the Virginia early season opened, the first year it came in, I think it was 4 or 5 years ago. We treated a couple bear, and just like typical us, we hadn't killed anything. And I don't know if it was I think it was Hot Rod, struck a bear coming across the road, turned loose on it, run up it didn't go really anywhere, went up in a hollering tree, and it treed in a huge poplar tree, and it was way up in this poplar tree. I mean, it was way up in it. So we were going to let one of his boys kill it. Well, they decided they didn't want to. Well, I got in there, and all of us was in there, and we were going back and forth, is it legal? Is it not legal? Is it, we had weights from not legal to 250 pounds. But one thing I learned, and it's been pretty, it's been a good way to read a bear, is if you see a hump on their back, usually that's a pretty decent bear. Well, this bear had a hump. So anyway, we let Wesley's daughter, Taylor, ended up shooting the bear. And when that thing hit the ground, it doubled in size. The bear weighed 409 pounds. And we almost walked off and left it. Mm-hmm. Like, we were bickering back and forth. I won't say bickering, but we were like debating back and forth on, I don't know. And I said right then, I was like, I'm just going to say it's black and it's a bear. Because if you can misjudge one that's 400 pounds and you think it's barely legal, that's how deceptive it is. But anyway, talking about how the bear grew, I mean, that was one for us. And that was just, 4 or 5 years ago. Like, from walking off and leaving it to 409 pounds, it was a great bear. And of course, Hot Rod's two boys, man, when that thing hit the ground, they seen how big it was. They were kicking themselves for not taking that shot.
Yeah, it's not an easy thing to do. I mean, sometimes you can, some trees are a little bit easier to judge them in, but if it's a big tree and you can't see the full body of the bear, and it all plays part of it. Or if you only see, the back or the side, you don't have a good look at its head. But even then, the head will fool you if with them. I mean, so you really got to take some time to study them, and I'll give somebody a best guess, but I usually am more on the conservative side than I am the on the plus side, just because. I have seen them knocked out and think it was a 200-pound bear and it was a 100-pound bear, and that's it just happens. But it's all part of it.
Yep, that is. So y'all killed 3 that day, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and they were all over 450.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep.
So one thing that I was going to ask you about while I was down there, and I got sidetracked or got distracted. So the bear in North Carolina on the coast, we'll talk about the western side of the state, but the coast, are typically That's where your bigger bear come from. I guess I'm assuming, I haven't looked it up, but the state record's still from Hyde County, and that's that 868. Is that correct?
I'm not even sure. I don't even know. I know there's been some killed that have been big, but it's been on crop damage, or there have been issues to the point that I guess they couldn't be counted. But so I'm not even sure what the record is as of now.
But so in my mind, everybody says, the bear's big and huge down there. Well, yeah, because of the environment, because of the food, this, that, everything else. But you're not seeing those 800-pound bear like I feel like, 15 years ago, that's what you were seeing. Y'all, just while I've been down there, I mean, you killed the 500, the other guy killed a 516, you killed a 626. Those are really, really good bear. But I guess what I'm trying to say is, in my mind, and this may be fabricated or it may be just a perception, that, I was expecting big bear. I don't know that I knew what to expect, but you're not seeing those 700 and 800 pounders like I guess what I had perceived as this is what you're going to see.
No, I mean, I'll tell you right now that anything that's over 6 is extremely rare. And if you're in the 5 and even the 4s and 5s are, they're nice bears, and they're not behind every tree. I mean, while you might have a good opportunity to kill them in this part of the world, maybe better than some areas. They're still very, very few. I mean, few and far between. I mean, most of the folks that we carry in to kill those type of bears, and I'll tell them, they will never have an opportunity to kill a bear that big again unless they specifically go out and spend a bunch of money to pay for it.
Yeah.
And I don't think they actually realize what they do. A lot of them, when they do have an opportunity to even see and shoot a bear that size. I mean, I can count on one hand probably the number of bears that I've seen killed in the 6s.
Mm-hmm.
It goes in cycles. Some years, the biggest bear we might kill is in the 400-pound range.
Mm-hmm.
Some years we'll kill a couple in the 600-pound range. It really varies, and it's you never know. They move so much, and you never know where one might come out of one area into another, and might pick one up, or one might come out of a refuge or a swamp or something like that, some area that's not easy to get to. But they're really few and far between. But everybody sure wants to kill a big one.
Yeah, and I mean, I know when I left down there, that was what was on my mind is, that guy got to see that 515. I was like, man, if he thinks he's going to get that opportunity, he's crazy. But then again, we'll go into that in a minute. But so you got 3, and then, the next couple of days, what took place?
I think the next couple of days we ended up, just getting some average, in the 200-pound range. If I remember, I'm trying to remember off the top of my head. I have it written down somewhere, but, the next couple of days, I believe we were in the average bear range. And then that's when you would come down.
Yeah.
Just good average 200-pound bears. I mean, that's probably the average bear, and good bears, good eating size, if you want to call it that.
Yep. Yeah.
But just good bears for folks. We're definitely looking for those type, as well. I mean, because like you said, there's just not that many of the bigger ones that, out there.
Yeah. And I think, like I said, that's a perception, You know, that's what I was trying to say earlier is, you know, that's perception. Anywhere you go and you get a 200-pound bear, you should be proud of what you've done.
Oh, yes.
Especially here, you know, in the western part of the state right now. I mean, yeah, people are going to kill a 300 and a 400 and, you know, they killed a 6-something here. And then somebody sent me a picture from down in Wise County. A guy had killed a 690 something, which is unheard of in this area. I mean, I've been hunting, you know, 27, going in my 28th season, and you know, I've never seen a bear that big in where I hunt, and probably never will. We hit a 450 one time, and that was just unheard of. So the 200-pound bear, I think I'm with you. I think that's a good average bear size. That's a good bear. A 200-pound bear for me here is a good bear. Anything over that, I feel like you've got a true trophy for us in the western part of the state.
Oh, for sure. I mean, I would say that's anywhere. I mean, is how I look at it. I mean, I tell people if you get something in the 300s, you know, that's really above average and everything. Even when I'm up in Maine or Virginia or down in North Carolina.
Yeah, I mean, I know Mark had said something about them killing a 500-pound bear up there, which, you know, that's probably rare too. I wouldn't think that it's common.
Well, you know, it depends on how much ground you're covering up there. There's right many big bears in Maine. They're just spread out. Mm-hmm. So I mean, I think we got a couple in the 3s. One was right in the 390s, I think, this year in Maine for us. So, I mean, that was a good boar, walking baying bear, and if he was filled out fat all the way, he would have been in the 4s too, but just hadn't gotten there yet.
Yeah. So yeah, y'all killed. You had told me you killed a couple 250s, and then I came down, and the first day let's just talk about that. I come down and we hunted that one section. It was kind of a cluster. And the dogs trailed through, and you know, I want to put this in here because when you and I, Doug, and talked before, you know, Doug had talked about a trail dog and, you know, this and that, and, you know, what his expectations were, and I actually seen what he was talking about, and so So Doug, I don't know where he'd put dogs down because I was with Wade and I wasn't sure. But they come across the road in front of us, and those dogs were moving. Like, they weren't like, you know, if I hadn't have been with Wade and talking to him, I would have said the dogs were running. Now, where I said they jumped, no, but they were up and running. That's what they look like to me. So they went through that block, and we cut them off. And I wanted to put one of my dogs down, and there was several dogs down. I don't know how many, but there was 3 that come through, and I waited a little bit, and then I went to put one of mine down, and then the back dogs come through. But now when the back dogs come through, they got jacked up. They weren't, you know, they ended up stopping and whatever. And the 3 dogs that come through in the front made a big loop, went almost out of that section and turned and come back. And I don't know, you had went on around. I can't remember where you had went to, but they come back to us and they caught. So I was able to put 2 dogs in. They were 400 some yards. I packed 2 dogs in. So the first dog that I put in was Trip. And Trip is the dog that you guys have heard me talk about, who got wrecked back in September on that bear that we caught here on the ground. He got beat up pretty bad. I mean, he was out of commission until I think I took him out a week before I come down to your place, and I had roaded him just to see if he was going to be able to function, and if his gait was okay, because the shoulder we pretty much think it broke his shoulder blade. We did not do an X-ray because talking to the vet, if that shoulder blade's broke, a lot of times when you go in there and wire it, makes things complicated. And anyway, I chose not to on his advice, and we was just going to let it heal. So I took him out and roaded him one night, just to see how he was going to operate, see how it was going to phase him. But I basically had him up from early September, all of October, to the first. So it was a good 6 or 8 weeks I had him up. So he acted normal. So I wanted to see how he was going to do. I wanted to know if he was going to go back or if he was going to, be done with them or what. So I put him in first, and then I put Maggie, the black dog, in. And they went right in, stayed, and they made a little loop, come around and made a little loop, come right back in, and then they just pulled up treed. So that one, that was probably a 15-minute, maybe 20 minutes that my dogs was there before they treed. But so Trip stayed. Of course, he's always been a nice tree dog. That wasn't an issue. So anyway, I was pretty tickled with that he just didn't, boogie out of there when he got in there and found out what it was. So anyway, it was a sow and a cub. We gathered the dogs up, took a few pictures, and skedaddled. And by that time, you had dropped some dogs. So tell what happened on your end, because I wasn't over there. I wasn't sure.
Yeah, I was walking a cutover edge, the ground where we hunt, you can kind of look at it and they're going to lay in the thickest ground that there is. And you kind of know, and we train, throughout the summer and stuff, different places, and you kind of know where they lay. So I was walking a couple of dogs, just kind of around the perimeter of a cutover where I figured that they would have crossed or gone through to some good laying ground. And a dog struck in the middle of that cutover, and about this time it was getting a little warm, if I remember right, and that cutover was just full of broom straw. And anyway, they beat around with it, got them off. They kind of walked them a little bit further, and they struck a little bit better and took it on across, but they were going away from the laying ground. But they were hitting so good, I just let them go. And sure enough, they ended up going crossing the path. And I think Doug had gotten around there by that time, right when they were getting ready to cross the path, and he sent a couple dogs as well. And then they ended up going around and getting after another one, and that one was a good race. That was probably one of the better races that we've had all season, all North Carolina season anyway. That one actually ran, good and stretched some dogs out. And you can actually see if you got a dog that knows how to run something with a bear like that. And a lot of times we don't get those type of bears. A lot of ours will either pop up or just sit down and bay here. So sometimes it's nice to get a good running bear.
Yeah, I know that I finally got around there, and I was trying to get dogs into them, and they had crossed the far road and come back into the block, and I ended up putting 3 dogs down. I put 3, Trip, Houdini, and Hart down, and they took out there, but they were way behind y'all's dogs. Y'all's dogs had probably already crossed the next road into the next block. But they went on through, and we ended up driving around and catching them, I guess, a block back from where y'all ended up killing it.
It was actually two blocks. It was 2 blocks. Yeah.
Yeah. So we ended up catching them because they were so far behind. I was going to try to get them back up in there, but it was done before we could do that. So. But they come on through there. Like I said, they were behind. I got them in behind. So Yeah,
well, and there was a lot of other dogs there that got behind and kind of got bogged down, and that don't help. You get dogs that get strung out and bogged down. It's hard for a dog to pull out and pull ahead or catch up to the head dogs when you got something like that.
Yeah, there was a lot of barking. there was a lot of barking going on. So that was our first, and it was lunchtime. You're right. It was almost lunchtime before, it was 11 o'clock, I guess, when we got out of there. And it was getting warm, so we decided just to call it a day, and then we come home, piddled around, and then the next morning, we went into another section, and it took us a while. We rode the roads. Y'all looked a lot. Tried to find tracks coming in and out of the block because we'd had rain the night before.
Yep, that's right. Yep.
Yeah,
had the good rain, so it gave us a good chance to look and see where you could actually track one out a little bit better on some of them sandier roads and everything.
Well, and we knew that there was a sow and cubs, right? Mm-hmm. Well, and then somebody had seen them crossing into the block or crossing out of the block that we were hunting.
Mm-hmm. And then back into it.
And then back out. I mean, you were sitting in the road, and here she comes again. Like, can you just stay away? Like, I mean, her and them cubs were all over the place that day.
Yeah.
But it took us a while to get something going. But I guess you and Doug had put two dogs. You put one, he put one, and they trailed, come through that block and went towards the highway. And we caught them, and then I think somebody had said, or Doug had found that track early that morning that he thought it looked like it slid off the bank, right?
Well, he thought he'd seen where something had gone off there, and we ended up putting a couple dogs down there, and I think it was two of mine and one of his, and they went in there and trailed right to it and found it and bait it for. I don't know how long they bait it before we ended up actually even packing it, but they bait it for a long time.
It was
just them 3 dogs.
Yeah. So it was right at 50 minutes before I packed mine. Mm-hmm. And then, here we go again. I packed my 3 young dogs. I packed Houdini, Hart, and Trip, and they flew right in there like they always do. And Houdini done the same thing he done last time I was down there. He went in there, he opened up, because you asked me, you said, did you get your dogs in? I said, yeah, they're there. And they blowed up, and then he come out just as fast as he went in, the same path. So I had to run him down back on that one road, caught him up. The other 2 stayed for a while. And then, I mean, it was another hour before everybody else started packing. Mm-hmm. And when they made that, after that trip, because the thing was just basically walking huge circles. And when I say walking, I mean walking. So when they started packing dogs, I don't know what happened. I don't know. But Hart ended up coming out, which for me was surprising because she's one of the 3 young dogs that I have is more consistent. But Trip stayed the whole time, and you actually caught him, tied him up after y'all took care of business.
Yep. Yeah. I mean, that bear, that one was kind of unique one. He was definitely one of the ones that he would wind you.
Yes. Yeah.
And he was road shy. He didn't want to cross a road. He was definitely a very wary, boar. So I mean, he'd been around the block a little while, I believe.
Well, yeah. I mean, we all had started in at some point in time and turned. Mm-hmm. And then, the other guys come in to keep him off the highway because that's what was worrying us. Mm-hmm. And Yeah, I mean, that, everybody kind of had to work as a team because every time you get in, he would get within that. Well, I mean, it's basically about 100 yards. He would turn and go the other way, and it was kind of like playing chess there for a while. But that, I actually was watching the time, and it was a little over 3 hours from the time you guys turned loose to the beginning to, the time that y'all got in there and actually get him taken care of. And like I said, y'all had the original couple dogs on him. Trip got packed in. He stayed the whole time, which I'm very pleased. I was very concerned that after he took the beating he did, that he wasn't gonna stay. And the reason that I felt that way is because when Trip just turned 2, like he literally turned 2 into September. But last year, he wouldn't stay on a bear on the ground. He would run. If it was a bear that wasn't mean, he would run in, and then you would see him like kind of fall back on the Garmin, and he may make a big circle, or he would stay back and follow along and then just drop out if it continued on for a long period of time. And if it was a rough bear, which we had in December, we had a mean little scuzz that, he was whipping dogs and running dogs off. And, Trip didn't want no part of him. So that was progress made from last season to this season with him. And what he's doing compared to what he was doing last year. So I'm pleased with the progress that we've gotten so far with him, or I've gotten so far with him. But that's why, and I wanted to get him down there, see what he was going to do on a bear on the ground. And, he surprised me, honestly. Like, I would have said, if he'd have said, what's going to happen? I was like, I think he's probably going to come out of there. But he didn't. So... tickled, and I don't know why Hart did, and I don't.
Yeah, you'll know. You'll find out if you get on another one that's a little bit rougher. And that, we were fortunate not to get on anything that was rough. But it definitely is a game changer when they start running dogs a little bit and wanting to be a little rougher than than. Like I said, they just definitely will test a dog, and you'll really figure out what you have. I have one that's I think he'll be 18 months old, the 29th of this month, and he got roughed up in Maine and twice here in Virginia, and I noticed him on a couple, on the ground in Carolina this season where he was a little more cautious, which I kind of he stayed, but he was definitely a little bit more cautious and not as intense compared to what I'd seen him in the past. And I think he'll work through it. He seems to. I'm hoping that it's going to be a little bit more respect that he shows to him, so that way he doesn't get roughed up. I'm hoping he's going to learn from his mistakes. Mm-hmm.
Well, and he's in that transition stage too, as far as a dog's life. He's kind of trying to fill it out, and then as next year rolls around, he's either going to mature, and you'll see that development, or he's just going to say, I don't want to do this, which it seems like he's doing. He's doing what you want him to do. So
yeah, I've seen him come around. I've seen him on a few there toward the end of the season. He had come around and was right back. So hopefully, if we keep the luck we've had as far as not getting on rough ones, or too bad of ones, hopefully he'll keep progressing in the right direction instead of regressing.
Well, so let me ask you, because I think for the area that I'm in now, do the bigger bear, like the one that we killed that day, the guy killed that day that Dallas killed, it was 5:15. Do those bear get, like, do you see those bear getting rougher, or are they more docile and just run dogs off and don't really like cut them up like the 125 and 150 pounders that I see here?
So I've only seen one that was in that 500-pound range that I would say was a rougher bear. And so it's, I would say, very rare, to have one that's big. The ones that are bad, the one that I can remember right off the top of my head, it would be a roar, them baying, and it would just shut up.
Mm-hmm.
It was like an eerie silence, the dogs, and then you'd hear one dog come in, and it would be a silent for 20 seconds or 30 seconds, just eerie, and then you'd hear a dog bark here, a dog bark there, and then it'd be back a roar. Because those bears that are like that are that big, they're actually big enough that if they do connect,
mm-hmm.
They got enough there to do some damage. Really, you get those smaller ones in the 180, 150 pound range. If they're bad, they can be a handful. But really, some of them ones that are in the 300, like 300 to 350 range, we had one of those in Maine,
mm-hmm.
and that one was a handful. I mean, and rarely around here, rarely do we see them that size act like that. But like I said, in that one we had got on there in Maine, I mean, I was pretty tickled with, I had them 3 litter mates. At that time they were 16 months old, and they stuck him, and stayed, and until we could get it, that they ended up, some of them come off, and then we packed some other dogs. But that bear would pick a dog out and try and catch it, and those, and he was big enough he could hurt something, and those are can be hard on them, especially a young dog. If the young dog doesn't have that mental capability to handle that, it's a making or breaking moment, is from what I've seen. They either got it at that point or they don't. And sometimes, if you put one in there that's too young and you just happen to get on one like that, it's like I said, it's going to be a making or breaking moment.
Well, and that we're talking about, bear that run. Yeah. And I mean, I've seen the 200 range bears, tear up dogs pretty good. I've seen 400-pound bear kill a dog before. I've seen that stuff. It's not as common as the smaller bear for whatever reason. But another question I was going to ask you when I was down there, and I don't know, I think we all loaded up and left before I got to, but so y'all have a lot of white dogs. I noticed that Doug's dogs are white with speckles. And I'm talking about the Walker looking dogs, not the mixed and the plots and stuff that you guys have. But Willie and Tom and Doug's dogs. Magnum was a white speckled dog. Like, do you guys not see that the bear picked them out more so? Are they not the dogs that get cut up more on the mean bear?
I don't know that I've really kept track. I mean, it's so thick here. If they move, if they're in that thick stuff anyway, they're not going to be able to see them anyhow. The biggest issue that you run into here, as far as dogs, I think, getting caught or cut, or if you got too many dogs and it's too thick where a dog can't get out of the way, and that's just going to be whatever dog's up front. Closest to the bear when he breaks towards them. So as far as color wise, I haven't seen anything, and probably the biggest issue or the most dangerous part is when it actually comes time to take that shot, and making sure that you get a clean shot and clean kill. Because to be honest, that's when, if dogs get hurt, more than likely that's when they get hurt, is in that moment after the gun goes off, that first time, and that's the trickiest part to deal with, and probably the most dangerous part of the whole thing for the dogs.
Yeah.
Some of them are good and they stay back, but most of the time it just amps them up, and I think they make some foolish mistakes, and then the bears also, it could be hurt or dying, or if it doesn't end it right there. That like I said, that's probably the most dangerous part of the entire situation, and where dogs can get hurt. So, I mean, like I said, this year, so far this season, we've been very fortunate in Carolina to we had very good results as far as taking people in and handling what we had when we took people in. So we've definitely been very fortunate this year.
Well,
so far,
something too that I want to kind of throw out there, that one thing that I've liked about being down there with you guys. My first experience in North Carolina, which was years and years and years, 20 years ago, wasn't very good. I felt like there was too many dogs. And I felt like if your good dogs can't get out of the way because of cheerleaders. And I noticed that you guys, every time that I've been with you, it's really just a handful of dogs. You can probably count every dog that's there on both hands. And a lot of times it's less than, that many dogs. And I like that because it gives the dogs time, place. It gives them, opportunity to operate, do the things they want to do. They don't have to worry about, fighting to get out of the way, running over top of dogs to get out of the way. And I know everybody's hunting style is different, but like I said, from the first time I was down there 20 years ago to now, it's two different styles and two different, it's just two different styles of hunting. I don't see the number of dogs that I did my first stint doing that.
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, we carry, a fair amount of dogs, I feel like, but, I carry half mine one day or, essentially half, and then half the next. So that way I got fresh dogs every day. And Doug does the same. And some of the guys, they only have 2 or 3 dogs that have, that have dogs, and they might bring them every day and stuff like that. But, or puppies, sometimes we're, puppies, and a lot of times, usually they don't hurt you if you don't have too many of them. It gives them an opportunity to get out there for handling. And then, you might get, anytime you can give them an opportunity where they can, have those switches click, it definitely can pay off. So, I mean, and then too, we do, there's enough, for the most part, there's enough bears where, sometimes you might be after 1 or 2 and you might need those, you might split up or the dogs might split. I mean, while we were walking that big one that day, one of mine, she fell off and ran one of them 4 cubs around, and I ended up catching her off that, so, I mean, like I said, you just don't ever know, what kind of a situation you might run into. I mean, and granted, those blocks that you saw are not the thickest blocks that we have. I mean, those really are pretty nice. I mean, that's probably some of the better hunting that we have. It's thick, but it's not the tunnels. Those tunnels are where things can get little tight, and where dogs can get jammed up in and can't get out of the way. Whereas that was enough room there where dogs could move around, and they're briars and it's thick, but it isn't like some of the other where you're having to crawl in there to them through a tunnel.
Yeah. Well, like I said, I like that fact. I like the fact that there's not 30 dogs. There's usually 5 to 10 at the most, and
I mean, and there might be, like that particular day, there was enough dogs in there. I didn't send, I kept 4 in the truck, that if we would have needed them, then yeah, I would have sent them. But we didn't need them, sometimes, and killing a bear on the ground, sometimes you can have too many dogs where they almost kind of get in the way, where you can't, because, the dogs, if he's walking, and I don't know how many times I've seen dogs pop out in a path or a streak in front of the bear, and so it just makes it a little harder to get that shot. But it's, you just kind of have to, but at the same time, I'm also the believer of, if you don't bring them and wish you had them, that don't help you much.
Yeah, it's better to have them and not need them than need them and not have them.
Exactly.
Yeah, I think Spook and Kate were mad at me when we come home because they didn't get turned out. They were pretty mad. They were pretty mad at me when we got to the house.
Well, if he would have crossed that road, I'm sure that they would have been sent.
Yeah, they would have. Yeah, if he would have come up out of there, but he just didn't want to. He didn't want to cooperate, did he?
No.
You're right. That bear was smart. He'd been in there. He knew he was smart the way he operated.
Yeah, I think one person saw him one time before, laid eyes on him one time before we got somebody in there. And when we saw him and the fella shot him, that was the first time we had seen him, or second time he'd been seen the whole, in that whole time frame.
Yeah.
So, I mean, he would smell you. You had to have your wind right. You had to have, you had to be off the road. You had to, you had to be in the woods and heading. And he wouldn't sit still. It's not like he was going to base solid where you could walk up on him or get around him and slip up on him. He was constantly moving.
Mm-hmm.
He may be set up for a minute or two, but he was, for the most part, constantly moving.
Yeah. So after I left, that was the 2 days. Yeah, we didn't do anything else after that. No, we didn't, because it was lunchtime. It was after 12 before we got him out of there.
Yeah.
So we just called it a day. And then, how did your last couple of days end? How did they end up?
We ended up getting a few others in the 200-pound range. Let me think. Was it Friday? Friday we got on one, a real good one, and walked and bayed him for again. It was a kind of the same deal, kind of a all day affair, and it was actually kind of funny. The fella. He put in some work to get that one. They walked that one down. That block is it's not a little, it's a lot bigger, and there's no paths. So I mean, it was a lot of walking through the thick stuff to get to him down behind him till he would. And that one he would bay up a little bit more solid. And I think he slipped. I think they shot at him. The fella shot at him twice. Two separate occasions. Well, actually, it was 3 separate occasions before he ended up getting him. That third time was a charm for him. But I think that one ended up weighing 626. So that was a good bear. He was long. I mean, they got to have that length if they're going to have that weight.
Yeah. No, he was a really good bear. Really, really good bear. The pictures you'd sent me. And then you finished up with a couple more, and that kind of finished y'all's season, or?
Yep. We finished up with a couple more, and that was kind of a wrap up of it. We got that big one there, and then we ended up going to a different block and got on some more, in that 200-pound range, and and that was kind of a wrap for the season. I mean, we had some good runs in there. Most of them, I believe, were either treed or shot or taken across a path or a road or something like that. So,
right.
Most of them, I'm pretty sure they didn't didn't bay. I mean, the last ones there that we got on, but you know, it's one of those situations where I like the baying. I like the bears that bay. I've never, you know, it's taking somebody in or going in on a bay up pair is probably about the biggest adrenaline rush that I've ever experienced. And but at the same time, that seems to be where they end up. Where dogs, if one's going to get hurt, that's usually where one's going to get hurt. So I'm not necessarily upset when we don't get on the one that bays.
Yeah, no, I'm with you. Like I said, it's always a good test. And, you know, the one thing that I've learned from coming down there between, last year, I'm trying to think about that. Last year was a little different. Last year was different than this year. My young dogs were old enough to go. And, you know, the thing that I've taken away from being able to hunt with you guys and just hunting a different area that, you know, what looks good here may not look good there. What looks good there may not look good here. You know, different environments, different hunting, you know, different hunting styles. Like, you know these things because it's kind of, you know, if you can sit and rational with yourself, you know, okay, well, that makes sense and that makes sense. But when you see it, like, it puts everything into perspective, and it just makes things different. And like I said, it's not the same. It's not the same. I don't care how you look at it.
And that's why I like to travel. So I go to, you know, Maine is not the same as here. The mountains isn't the same as here. Even the central part of the state isn't the same as here. You know, there's some little different nuances and different styles. But if you get a dog or get a pack of dogs that can perform in all of those locations, you know, and meet that goal of catching that game in those different areas and different terrains, you know, and you test it and prove it. That's what I look for. That's what I want, you know, and that's what I want to produce, and that's what I want to breed. And the only way that I can tell what that is to travel and hunt those different locations. You know, that we don't get the running, you know, Virginia will get some running bears, you know, where you have to run them, you know, they got to run to catch them. You know, in the mountains, that's what y'all get a lot, you know, you know, a lot, up there. And Maine, you know, you really, that's kind of why I like going to Maine is I can take some young dogs and in 2-3 weeks, I can expose them to bears that, you know, have some Nikes on and like to run. But then also you get on some that walk and bay up there too. And then it just gets them into that better mindset and shape for when they come down here for this season, Virginia, North Carolina, and they definitely being able to hunt from Maine and then come down to Virginia and then North Carolina. I definitely think that sets them up to really be very consistent, and that's what I'm looking for is dogs that are consistent or consistently perform.
Yeah, you know what we were the first morning that we were down there. You know, I was riding with Wade, and we were out on a highway tracking some dog. I don't know. We went out there to make sure they didn't go through that one section, and he was talking to me about the type of country that I hunt. And he was like, what, y'all have open timber. And I was like, yes, we do. If they come off the mountains and get down in the lower ground, it's open timber. There's some open timber on the mountains. And I said, our laurel thickets are thick, but they're not swamp timber cut thick, And we were talking about, he was talking about the dog, because we were talking about Trip, and I was telling him everything, and he was like, so y'all don't bay bear up? And we do. But if I say that we tree 20 bear, we may have one or two that just walks and bays and stays on the ground. And sometimes it fluctuates. Sometimes we may have 5 or 6, and some years we may not have none. You know, I can speak, you know, just from last December, of all the bear that we treed or caught, the only one that stayed on the ground was the one that was running the dogs off. Everything else treed.
Mm-hmm.
And I was explaining to him about getting on the north of the mountain and getting in the rocks, and they get in them ledges, and they use those ledges to start, you know, putting distance on the dogs because they'll climb through them, and the dogs have to go around them, and then every time they come through that, make that loop in there, they're getting further and further behind.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I mean, Wade and I had that conversation about, you know, just the different types of terrain that we hunt, and you know, if you know, if I hunted where you guys were, like, I'd probably have to change my dogs, really, because like I said, you know, you guys wouldn't have what I've got because they don't perform at the level that your guys are performing at. And then, you know, and like I said, you guys haven't been up here, but there would be some differences, I'm sure.
Oh, yes.
But you're right.
Yeah.
I want a dog that's consistent. I want a dog that I can turn loose in, you know, North Carolina with you guys, Maine. I don't care if I go to Japan. I want that dog to be consistent. And that's really, really hard to find. And, you know, we've had this conversation on this podcast on the journey before about what is a bear dog. And I think that's something that is a word that we have left out. Not just a bear that can run and tree game, not just a dog that can run and tree game by himself, but a dog that can consistently do it in different types of terrain. Mm-hmm. Now that would be the elite bear hound, I think.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, I mean, I agree with you. I mean, that's why I travel to hunt and hunt in those different places. And I, don't get me wrong, I don't come up to the mountains and hunt a whole lot, but I try. You know, I want to get them up there to experience it anyway. Whether they make a loop around or run, it just, depending on how the seasons work out, I try to go where seasons are in and things like that. Cause like I said, I like to get bear in front of the dogs, and I like when seasons are in and they can, they can be rewarded for catching said game, if that opportunity arises. So the dogs, for me, as far as that consistency, they got to love that game, love or hate. I don't know what it is. But they got to want to be there with it. And that's what I look for here. I mean, just like that pup you got there, at your house, I mean, that line that pup's off of, and don't get me wrong, it's a total outcross, but at the same time, the mother seems to be producing some really nice dogs that have a lot of stay and are seem to be they consistently stay. And that's, I feel like, the biggest, one of the biggest hurdles is they got to be there in order to do their job. If they leave it, then they're not doing their job. And that's what I look for. That's the groundwork anyway, the start, the basis, and then you can work on the trailing and things like that later on. But if they don't love it, they're not going to trail. They're not going to stay. They're not, they're not going to run to catch. And that's, they got to love it in order to really put their heart into it. And that's what I'm look for and what I keep here.
Yeah. With Rogue, he's already seen some game, and I'm hoping, and next year, the dogs change so much. We found out with the pup, the A litter that we've raised so far, how much those dogs have changed in a period. Well, they're not a year old yet, but they're 10 months. Yeah, they're 9 months, 8 months. I don't know. They're 9 months old. And the dogs that you would have picked out at 3 months old are not the dogs that they are now. But with Rogue, he is so gamey that I am really worried that the first bear he sees, he's going to try to tackle it, and he's either going to learn a lesson or he's going to end up pushing up lilies. I just don't know which, and I hope it's the first one because, I like what I see out of him. He's super intelligent. He listens. Like he's a nice pup. I mean, how old are they now?
The six there, I think they're right around 6 months.
6 months,
6 months old. Yeah.
Yeah.
So they're his litter mates. I got 4 litter mates to him, and they'll run a fox and they'll bay a pig.
Yeah.
And it took them. They bayed the pig the first time they ever seen it. But those dogs are smart. They're gamey, but it usually don't take them long to figure out the game, to figure out that, hey, if I get too close, it's just a matter of whether or not they're able to cap that drive to the point that they learn from it, and so, it'll be interesting. It'll be fun to watch him to see and then see how he compares just trait wise to what you're, accustomed to. And then to see how those traits also then perform or how they play out, in your terrain. I think that'll be probably the biggest or a very interesting part is how that, if he likes a bear, when he gets to the point he actually sees one for the first time, if he likes them, a lot of them dogs that like them, they can do some things that will put you in shock and awe sometimes.
Yeah. Well, let's just hope he's smart enough to realize that I can't eat this thing. I just hope he's bayed the neighbors' bulls, the cows, the goats. We got a donkey down here. He jacks that thing up. The horses. Like, he's into everything. Like, if it moves, he wants to chase it. And, of course, I've got him honed down where I can turn him out in the yard, but I don't now. I used to leave him loose, but I don't leave the house now if he's loose. Like, when I leave, he's got to be put back up. But if we're home, we let him run loose and everything. We've got him to the point now that we can do that. But yeah, he's an ornery little scuzz, I can tell you that. But BB, before we wrap this up, is any takeaways from your early season?
Just as far as what I look for, I'm always evaluating my dogs and what I have. I saw some pretty decent trailing work, but at the same time, I got some work that I need to do. I got a female that's a pretty decent little trail dog, but she's a little more on the open mouth side. She'll bark, and sometimes I can't trust her on whether or not what it is. It's not so bad if a bear has been there, or you see a track, or you got a camera, a picture, or something like that. You're going to jump that bear. She usually does pretty good about finding those types. But if you're walking, trying to walk and cut a track, you got to really watch her. So that's something I'm looking at going more into the second season. The second season is usually a lot more trailing involved. It seems the bears go more nocturnal, and then as it cools down, they seem to walk more. From just from what I've seen, and don't get me wrong, you'll have some where you might only trail them 200-300 yards and get after them, but it seems like for the most part that you do have to be a little bit more keen on trailing later in that December time frame, especially in the central part of the state, because food is scarce. The ag fields, they'll scrap those corn fields and soybean fields, and you might have to trail them, 3, 4, 5, 6, 8 miles to get them jumped. So I'm definitely going to be looking at that. Young dog wise, I got three dogs that are that'll be 18 months old, or a year and a half coming up. the 29th. And I'm liking what I'm seeing out of those. All three of them are dogs that you can kind of rely on. They're going to be there. They're going to help. But at the same time, now it's that time to if you do get on one of them trailing tracks, to put one of them down and see what you got as far as whether or not that dog might be interested in starting to trail some. And then I also have some other young dogs that are in the 8-9 month old category they're just starting. They've seen some bears, they've run some bears, and just continue to try and expose them whenever I get a good opportunity on a decent bear. And some of them, one of them is a male off my red and white, my spunky female, and he's really impressed me. I've only taken him about twice, and he started running, and he'll bay a little bit, and he's not treeing yet, but he's there. So, it's definitely exciting times as far as watching them puppies start to click.
Yeah, I think that's one of the things that I enjoy the most is seeing the development and how the dogs grow and come from that, that clumsy, floppy, tripping over its own ears puppy to, that well-oiled machine that we're all looking for. I love that development and watching that in our dogs. That's one of the things that probably draws me to it the most. But yep. Well, BB, I can't. I told you I was down there. Tell you again. I can't thank you and Doug enough for having me down and putting up with my junky dogs, and just letting me come down and watch and listen and learn. Like I said, I enjoy it. Hopefully, there'll be many more of those times, but I appreciate it.
Yeah, no problem. Hopefully, you'll be able to get down a day or two in the December season.
Yeah, like I said, we'll see how ours is going, and worst case scenario, should be able to make it happen for sure. But well, BB, until the next time, thank you for helping us teach, train, and learn.